Hey guys, hope you guys are having a solid start to the weekend. As promised, I want to talk about my strongest trade I've had this year in 2025. That took place yesterday, and it was a short trade. I want to go over a few things today. I am going to go into a little bit more depth than I usually do, just because there have been questions around, how I find where my entries are, the psychology, around, how I manage my trades and all that. And of course, I won't be able to go through the whole thing today, but I am going to try to capture a few things and elements of what contributed to the trade. And so, I think first and foremost, the day overall, encompassing Asia, London, and New York, in total, was a 10K day, which is the biggest that I've ever had in 2025. And I would probably say in futures wise, it's probably the biggest trade as monetary dollar wise. I've had bigger trades as far as points wise, but I that was from like, swinging overnight a single NQ con and just really letting it run all the way through. And those were still amazing trades, don't get me wrong, but the dollar hits home a little bit different for sure, and I'm sure many of you guys know. Um, a big part, in fact, of the fact is that I traded this one with Top Step X. And so, I'm still fairly new. I think I've only been trading with Top Step for about a few weeks or a couple of weeks actually at that. And thanks obviously to those who have kind of helped provide guidance and suggestions along the way of, why Top Step X and why they recommend it. Their platform, or I should say their Express accounts, they essentially operate similar to the My Fund of Futures expert accounts as well, which is kind of why I had the ability to hold this trade. Most of the times I would never hit for trades this large because I'm going for a consistency rule. And if I ever bagged a 10K day on any other account, it would actually make my life a living hell to try to even get a payout, because then I would have to make that and more again in order to meet my consistency rule, right? So love the flexibility so far. Definitely very happy with the fact that I was able to nail this trade. Most of that 10,000, about a little over 9,000, that came from my short in the New York session. The prior dollars were done over Asia and London. And so, anyways, I have a couple things here shown here. I will go through this in further detail as well, but I want to capture here, as you can see, 10K on this account. It's a 100K account, and it was a day one active. So I've only had it for one day. So a great way to start off the account. I also want to talk about a few things around the stats, then managing losses and R multiple before we get into where I entered, where I exited, and all that. So first and foremost, on the left-hand side here, you'll see here the three contracts that I entered in on this trade. And it was taken just around 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And anyways, you can see here where I trimmed and where I exited. And again, large funds, right? First trim for 1,800, next trim by 3,100, and then the next and the final one, which I got stopped out on, and I'll explain a little why I got stopped out. Again, I accept it for what it is because of the circumstance, but 3,900. So all in all, a very solid trade. I also am showing here some of the trades I took the night before during Asia and London. And now these aren't all of them, but I want to specifically highlight the losses, right? I did have some wins, obviously, in order for me to have, had a 10K day. I had to have had a winning day, or not winning day, sorry, winning trades prior to the New York session. But I want to highlight these trades because I want you to see what is, familiar for you to kind of keep in mind when we talk about R multiple. I was able to, yes, take a trade and capture the larger move, 1,800, 3K, right? But you notice my losses though. I try to keep my losses as tight as possible. And that may not always be true, and in a sense of like depending on how much contracts I put in or whatever, right? But I do have a rule and system of how I take my stop losses and what have you. But this just gives you a good example of where you can have a lower win rate and still be super profitable. And now I trade on multiple accounts, right? And I individually trade them. So I have an account for every strategy, so to speak, right? And this is the, having Top Step, it gives me the flexibility to actually bag larger trades. So this is likely going to be the account that's going to have the worst win rate, to be honest, for me, because there's going to be a lot of stabs here and there to try to catch those larger moves. But as you've seen, if you guys have been following me on Instagram and YouTube already, I also have accounts that have like 70, 80, almost 90% win rates. Those are the ones where I'm taking those, those base hits, but those are also the ones that have been helping me achieve my payouts with my fund of futures and Tradeify and so on and so forth, right? So, obviously, there's no one way to trade, no one way to take your wins, but I just want to kind of highlight that. There's also another account that I'm playing with right now that I use as a back test to the futures forecast indicator tool that I've also been kind of sharing and talking about, which I won't talk about today, but that's just some examples of how I trade differently with different accounts. So you can see here, losses are fairly small considering, I mean, like all these losses combined don't even make up this one trim that I took on the win, right? And so that just gives you an example of what I'm referring to. Now, as we talk about stats here, I'm gonna blow this up a little bit more so it's easier to see. On the stats here, you can see that the on the day of New York session, I bagged the 9K, contributing to the 10K day. During the London and Asia session, I did about just shy of under $1,000, but I took like 10 trades, right? And so you saw that quite a few of those trades were losing trades, as I showed you earlier, right? And so if you look at this account, the win rate is not great. It's 57%. And when I say not great, I don't mean that it's like horrible, but it's obviously just above, it's just barely above 50-50, right? But what you can understand and see though is that the R multiple is obviously very strong, all things considered, which is why the average win or loss ratio here you can see the gap difference there already. So this is TraderStat, by the way, and I think I've talked to you guys about this before. This is what I use for trade review. Some of you guys will be very familiar with other platforms like TradeZella and all that. I really do like TraderStats right now. I've been using for about 4 weeks. I just like the use of ease, but also just the cost behind it, right? Not everyone has a lot of sum of money to be able to subscribe to larger platforms, and I think that this is good value for a starter, and it does exactly what you need to do. So anyway, so as I've talked about so far, the wins, the losses, and what that's contributed to. So now I'm going to get straight into what I know you guys are really wanting to know, which is the charting, right? Um, so sorry, let me close this up. That's the wrong one here. That's just there. Yeah, there you go. Um, so this is the chart and this is the channel. So I'm going to show you two different tabs here because I'm going to show you how I found this entry, which is what you want to know, and then how I executed the trade, right? And then I'm also going to show you a video recording of me recording the trade live, so that I can also talk about the psychology. So right here, this is the New York opening. So about right there, that candle, that 5 minute candle was the opening candle. So I know there's a lot of people who caught longs here and made solid bank on that move up because that was still a very large move because from opening print up was it 884 to what 94 954. Yeah, that's like over 100 points, right? So that's a solid trade just right out of the gates. I told myself prior to that I was looking for a trade that would be that when we come to this level, I was interested in shorting. And now, so in a lot of the communication that I've kind of been posting is I've been trying to get longs to 900. I was trying to get longs to 21,900. And the reason for why I was looking for that, and you can see it in other cases as well, uh, this was an area of interest for me. And so we also had a mastermind level at I think it was 21,935, which I can see over here. 21, yeah, that 21,935. So the conviction for me on this trade is that we were about to come up to a mastermind level, which was important to me, which I won't talk about how I find the mastermind levels because that is the secret sauce of rake trades. But in terms of the channel, though, I can talk about that. And what I like about the conviction was my plan prior to already was that, if I had the mastermind level and I had the channel and it showed, the right volume and move, then for me, that was kind of like a check, check, check for me to take the trade, right? And so you can obviously tell that we shorted quite a bit from here. Now I'm going to talk about where I found this channel. So if you go farther back, you can see now very clearly as I zoom out, which is why it's so important for us to do multi-time frame analysis, that on what day was this? January 31st. It was also a Friday. You can see that we rose, we shot our way up and we found resistant, we retested, and we absolutely just plummeted. And if you take a look at it, we actually plummeted to almost the same spot. And I'm not saying that it's always going to operate this way, right? Coincidence, call it whatever you want, right? But that already showed me there was a large interest there to short potentially. Now, arguably, if it were to break out of this, we could have found ourselves going to higher levels, right? Which is where I think many people were looking for as well, which I mean, there was a thesis for both trade, right? But that's where I found the channel. So I'm often looking, whether it's an hourly, 4 hour time frame, I'm looking for basically areas that show strong interest of respect. And then I would run that in tandem with every other thing, price action, trend lines, indicators, you name it. Like I am looking for things to line up in conjunction with each other before I simply take that trade. So no one ticker is going to say, hey, I saw a channel, so I'm automatically going to short. No, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. But anyways, so that's kind of how I found the channel. Now I'll flip to the other tab here, showing kind of where the trade took place. So I entered here on the bearish hammer. Um, for three cons, and I will never exceed three cons on a funded account. You've seen me trade 5, 10 cons on an eval. It's an eval. Like I'm a little bit more comfortable with that risk because again, it's an evaluation and it's within my risk parameters, right? But if it's a funded account, I'll generally start with one contract and I'll ease my way into two or three depending on the conviction level of the trade itself. And so I took this trade and I entered at 21,940. And my risk on this one was 30 points. And I generally, on the New York session, I don't ever trade less than a risk of 30 points because, as you guys, anyone who's traded the New York knows, it moves fast. And honestly, 30 points can be wiped within a 2 minute candle. So I think if you're trying 20, 10 points, it's way too tight. I mean, to each their own. If you find success doing that, that's great. I just know it doesn't work for me, so I don't do that. And so I know trading minis can also be very taxing from a dollars perspective. So going micros sometimes can be the best way to go about it as well. Um, but again, I took my entry here, and you notice that from here, from this point on, we stayed within the channel. Now, someone, if you were looking for a premature entry, you could have entered here, you could have entered on that candle because you're like, oh, you know what, it hit my channel, I'm just gonna go in. That for me would be too risky. I liked that we dojied here. I liked that we had a bearish hammer here, showing that we were resisting this zone, right? And then followed by consolidation. So, during I'll tell you right now, these 10 minutes right here were psychologically taxing because I'm telling myself, okay, trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan. Especially when I can hear that other people are going longs during the time that I'm thinking about going short, right? So that all of that can affect your mentals, right? But for myself, I said, you know what? I've been planning this trade for a week now. I've been looking for this to happen. Trust the trade because I know that if I were to have either not taken the trade or gone longs and I was wrong, I would have had more FOMO and more tilt than if I were to have lost this trade. And the reason is because all that work to plan this trade, and if it didn't work out in the end of the day, that would have absolutely pissed me off, right? And that would have affected every other trade that I would have taken afterwards. So I was willing, based on the two, negatives, I'd rather lose this trade based on the plan of conviction than to miss the trade that I had planned just to watch it go. I know that tilts me more. So with that said, as I mentioned, I took the entry. The moment we came down and broke with volume or down to below the level here. So again, channel mastermind level. It was pretty straightforward after that. Now, you might ask, Alan, why don't you just hold the trade all the way through? Again, I have a plan. In order for me to catch the larger move, I do need to trim personally just for my own psychology. So I trimmed here at 21,838, which is just above 8 points above the mastermind level that was below. And again, I've said this before, and it's something that Jake Ricci talks about a lot. Don't be a prick for a tick, right? I could have waited, sure, but in hindsight, or in a lot of cases for me, I find that when I miss a profit-taking moment because I was so obsessed with that 1 point tick. Again, another one of those tilt things for me, right? So I'd rather just take the profit a few points sooner. I'll leave the dollars on the table, not a big deal. So I trimmed that, right? As you can see, the 5 minute candle continued to move. I trimmed again here at 21,772. Just because on the smaller time frames, I was seeing a little bit of like resistance, and looks like it was going to come back up. So I didn't want to risk it, so I took a little bit here. And then the last candle I stopped out at here was this candle right here as it pulled up. Now, this candle, honestly, if I knew that I was gonna be at my desk for another hour, I probably would have held on and I wouldn't have kept my stop as tight, mainly because of the fact that I would have given myself the room. I already secured a large portion of profit. So I would have been willing to risk that last con for a little bit more. Uh, I was mentioning on my Discord notes, I was looking for the 21,551 level, which we did end up coming down to by the time we hit 12:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So the move essentially did happen. I just didn't have the time to watch that happen. So knowing that I had to leave and bring my kids to school and all that type of stuff, I said, you know what, I'm gonna keep it tight, not a big deal. I want to, I'd rather take more of the profit at this point because I know I'm not gonna sit at my desk long enough to watch the trade happen. So that's why I got stopped out here. But as you can kind of see here, we respected this area once again. Call this a support to resistance. Call this the mastermind levels here again that was once again respected, coming all the way down here. So you can kind of see here the move played out. Now, as I captured all that, I do want to go over now. I'm going to show you the video recording of the trade I took. So this was a 25-minute trade, but I did speed it up so that's only under 3 minutes long. I want to talk about the psychology of this trade. So you can kind of see, you'll also see that I also took a trade on my 50K Express account as well. I didn't go as large size with that one. You'll see me pivoting between that, which is what is you'll see here. But so I technically got a dub on two different accounts. It's just that my 100K account was the one that I got the most out of. But you can kind of see here as I'm trading where my mindset was as I was taking this trade was, okay, it's moving, it's moving, it's moving in my favor. Stick to the plan, right? I constantly had, I had my larger move plan that was going to be down here, but I always had a stop and I always had a limit sell. And that was my ability to either trim or get stopped out where I can. And so I'm constantly inching and I'm moving the stop loss. I'm also moving the target. And now you might say to yourself, like, Alan, would you keep moving it? Like, what if it hits your target and then just pulls up and then you never comes back down? Um, I don't always move the target price. Obviously, if I'm very convicted on that plan, I'll stick to it. But it really just depends on what price action is showing me at the time, and maybe at the same time also what was the news that potentially caused this move to happen in the first place, right? But my stop loss, though, I will inch and move that based on where we are on the chart. And so I try not to look at the dollar too much, even though it's like right smack dab in your face. And the reason why I say that is because, staring at a P&L is not healthy. Let the chart do what it's supposed to do and work the plan that you had original plan for the chart already, right? And so I will move my stop loss based on what the chart's telling me. And again, at this point in time in the trade, the main reason why I started tightening my stop loss was mainly because of the fact that I had to go. I knew I wasn't going to be at my desk. Part of trading is also understanding your environment of trade and whether or not it fits the need of your ability to execute upon the plan. And so for myself, I know it's always tilt prevention, right? What am I willing to risk and what is going to cause me to have FOMO and tilt? When I tightened my stop loss, as you'll see here in a bit, I did that the moment I was like, you know what? I looked at the time. I got to go bring my kid to school. It's not a big deal. I'd rather not, lose this trade too much. I'd rather tighten this so that I can just get the profits that I want out of it. So that's the reason why I did tighten it, and you will see me get stopped out here in a few minutes here, but that was kind of the reason why I took the trade that I did. So hopefully that kind of helps provide a little bit of thought points around what I was thinking and all that. I think the last thing I'll leave off with is, so for the New York session, I talked a little bit about how I scalped the Asia session and why I take the trades that I take in another video last time. New York's very different. I have to have wider stops, but if I'm going to have wider stops, I should technically also have wider targets. Again, if you're looking to scalp the New York session, that's fine. You can probably go for your 1 hour trades and what have you. But generally, New York is where I will take my 2 to 3, 4 hour trades, which I'm holding for longer because generally my stop's also wider. So, anyways, I know this is much longer than my usual videos. Hopefully that adds a little bit of value. I'm stoked about the trade. I am very likely to go into Monday with very low expectation. I'm going to size down because this is the type of euphoria that will get you to do stupid shit, and you don't want to do that, right? And so I'm going to go low key. I'll go small size. I'll still work on my other accounts, get my scalp, my base hit so I can get my payouts on those. But for Top Step, I'll definitely take it in small strides. And if I do take a trade, it'll be sized down, maybe even scalps, right? Just to get my $200 minimum in on the day. But overall, hopefully that adds value and that makes sense to you. If you guys have any questions or anything, obviously drop a comment in the box below. If you guys find this valuable, please like the video and also subscribe. It means a lot to me. I am trying to share as much of my journey and learning for free for the masses out there. So anyways, thank you so much for taking your time to watch this. I will see you again soon.